As Dakota drove home from a friend's house, she had no idea her night was about to take a horrifying turn. As she proceeded through an intersection with a green light, an oncoming driver making an unprotected left turn failed to yield, smashing head-on into Dakota's Tesla. The other driver immediately began claiming that Dakota had run a red light. She tried to calm him down and explain that her light had been green. Eventually, the police were summoned to the scene. The responding officer was very excited when he realized Dakota had been driving a Tesla. He told the other driver to be quiet before requesting Dakota's Teslacam drive. He then plugged it into his laptop, watched the video, and with that, the case was closed. Teslacam for the win! Sadly, Dakota's Tesla was totaled, but we're pretty sure she probably ordered another one to replace it. This anonymous submitter from USA Baby sent us this video from when his Model Y was totaled. Those tire tracks are where his Tesla went straight into the woods and took out a tree. Let's take a look at the tape. He was on his way to the gym at 4 a.m. one morning, and he told us the roads were icy, which can also be seen in the video. As he headed into a bend in the road, he lost control and slid off the road, continuing for 30 feet before slamming into a tree at 40 miles per hour. Remarkably unhurt, our submitter called 911, but the police had trouble locating his Tesla buried in the woods. It took them around 10 minutes to find him in the 10-degree weather. The airbags had deployed, rendering the car undrivable, and it was later deemed a total loss. Our submitter took a rideshare to the gym so he could still get in his workout. USA, baby! He did visit the collision site later, realizing then how far into the trees his Tesla had traveled. It's incredible he not only walked away from the wreck, but he even managed to make it to the gym and work out. That's another win for the incredible safety of Tesla vehicles. Goncalo was driving his Model 3 in Odessa, Texas. He was planning to make a right turn when a semi-truck suddenly turned toward him. The trucker immediately accused Goncalo of causing the collision and claimed he had used his turn signal, until Goncalo offered to show him his Teslacam footage. The video reveals that the trucker didn't signal until immediately before he turned, and by then, Goncalo had already driven beyond the rear of the truck. After seeing the video, the truck driver clammed up while Goncalo called the police. Once the cops saw the Teslacam footage, they immediately found the trucker responsible and gave him a citation. Goncalo still hasn't gotten a repair estimate, but he doesn't think fixing his Tesla will cost more than $3,000 US. What do you think? Drop your repair estimates in the comments, and we'll let you know in a future episode what Goncalo's repair bill ends up at. Whoever guesses the closest will win a Wham Baam hat. Nick Hill was slowing down to stop at a red light, and take note of this cop car in the turn lane as it becomes important a little later on. Just as Nick Hill was about to come to a stop, a Subaru Outback was following behind him while the driver was signaling to make a late lane change to the left. As the driver merged illegally into the left turn lane, she clipped the corner of Nick Hill's Tesla in the process. Nick Hill honked, but the driver immediately took off and proceeded to make a left turn, running the red light as she fled from Nick Hill. Nick Hill pursued the Subaru while immediately dialing 911. Here's where that cop car from earlier comes back into play. Nick Hill told the emergency operator what had just happened, and they asked him to hold while they spoke to the dispatcher. The suspense is building. Just as the Subaru drove past the cop car, the officer lit up his party lights and pulled her over. Nick Hill stopped as well, and the officer did not look happy as he asked Nick Hill to pull around and stop in front of the Subaru. When Nick Hill asked the officer if he'd seen the hit and run or if he was responding to the call, the officer asked, "What hit and run?" He told Nick Hill he'd only pulled the Subaru over for speeding. After Nick Hill explained what had happened, the officer asked him to wait in his car while the other driver was given a field sobriety test. He then gave Nick Hill a case number so he could request a copy of the police report before asking him to leave. You know what? We're gonna go ahead and count this as a case of instant justice. This crazy incident comes to us from Richmond, British Columbia, where our submitter experienced some nasty Tesla-on-Tesla violence. Mr. Chow told us he was entering the Aberdeen Center parking lot with a custom-wrapped Tesla Model Y following behind him. There weren't many spots available on this level, so our submitter pulled into a reserved family parking spot to begin a 3-point turn to find another parking spot. The other Tesla driver passed him, but then stopped right behind him, so Mr. Chow wasn't able to pull out of the family parking spot to finish turning around. Assuming the other driver simply hadn't noticed him, Mr. Chow gave him a small honk to get his attention so he'd move forward and let him out. At that same time, a couple approached on foot. We don't have any footage of this, but Mr. Chow told us they got into some kind of physical altercation with the other Tesla driver after he jumped out of his car to confront them. Based on what happened next, Mr. Chow suspects that the other Tesla driver must have believed the couple were his passengers. Eventually, a passenger exited the other Model Y before the driver finally moved and let Mr. Chow finish backing up. He then parked in a different spot and went into the mall, thinking nothing more about it, until he came back, that is. Mr. Chow discovered his car was all scratched up. In fact, every panel of the car had been vandalized. Sentry mode revealed the culprit. In the footage, a man can be seen walking all around his Tesla and scraping it with what Mr. Chow thinks might have been a coin. He told us he immediately recognized the man as the driver of the other Tesla, so he rushed back inside the mall and got the attention of mall security. When they saw the video, they immediately called the police, then assisted Mr. Chow in putting together a report of the incident. The cops had no trouble locating the vandal, and Mr. Chow is now pressing charges against him. The estimate to repair the damage came to $5,000, leaving Mr. Chow with just one more thing to say: thank God for Sentry mode. Our next video is from Peter, and it's the first submission we've featured from Serbia. Fun fact, most people know Tesla is named after the inventor of the AC induction motor, Nikola Tesla, but you might not know he was Serbian. Peter was heading toward Belgrade when drivers ahead of him started to slow down, so Peter's Tesla automatically followed suit. The Audi Q5 driver behind him didn't get the memo before slamming into the back of Peter's Tesla Model 3. Peter doesn't know for sure, but he suspects the other driver was on his phone when the collision occurred. Both drivers pulled over on the shoulder next to 3 other vehicles that had already been involved in an earlier collision. Thankfully, neither of them were injured. Peter wanted to shout out his fellow Tesla owners in Serbia. Raise your hands in the comments below if that's you. Dr. Lee had just picked up his brand new Cybertruck, and while he knew it would turn some heads, he never dreamed it would distract people enough to cause collisions. While he was taking an off-ramp, the driver of a Subaru sped up to match his speed so he could get a better look at the stainless steel pickup truck. Sadly, the Cybertruck proved so distracting that the Subaru rear-ended a car. Dr. Lee pulled over and backed up to check on the involved drivers, and thankfully they were unhurt. He offered to use his truck to push the car off the road so it wouldn't be blocking traffic, but before he could get into position, police arrived and took over. Sam had just driven from Ohio all the way to the Toronto Pearson International Airport to pick up his girlfriend. When he was just down the road from the airport, a Hyundai suddenly appeared out of nowhere and smashed into his Tesla. Both drivers stopped and exchanged insurance information, agreeing to let their insurance providers handle everything. As Sam continued to the airport to pick up his girlfriend, he began to wonder, who would the insurance companies find responsible? He hasn't heard back from his own provider yet, and in the meantime, he wants to know what our viewers think. Tell us who you think will be found at fault for the collision in the comments. Sam got a repair estimate from his local Tesla-certified body shop, somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 to fix his brand new Model 3 Highland. Jake was driving home from work, and he'd been behind a Scion driven by a pizza delivery driver for a while. Jake told us this intersection they approached is notorious for collisions, as oncoming drivers turning left often fail to yield during unprotected turns. As Jake and the pizza guy approached the intersection, an oncoming driver failed to yield, and the pizza driver slowed down to avoid hitting them. But then, a second oncoming driver did the same thing. This time, the pizza guy had no chance to stop before T-boning the Honda. Jake immediately pulled over where he wouldn't be blocking traffic and made the first call to 911. The Honda driver also called 911, but Jake could hear him slurring his words while he was talking. When the cops arrived, they performed a field sobriety test on the Honda driver. We don't know what the results were, but we do know that after the test, the cops put him in handcuffs. When one officer asked Jake what happened, he replied, "Well, do you just want to see the footage?" Jake told us he was shocked at the fact that Jake could pull the video up on his Tesla's screen in seconds. We've seen plenty of bad overtakes, but this one might take the cake. The overtake cake, if you will. Overcake? Anyway, our submitter looked over at the driver, who waved at him as if to say he was okay. Our submitter just rolled his eyes and continued, unshaken by the taken over cake. This submitter had just one thing to say about this incident: don't be like this guy. A pickup driver ran his red light and T-boned an SUV, sending debris scattering all over the intersection. Thankfully, nobody was seriously injured. Please, pay attention. This submitter was driving to work one morning while watching the plume from a recent volcanic eruption that had started the previous evening. On top of that amazing sight, his Teslacam also captured a shooting star. That's got to top a double rainbow sighting, right? When he spotted the shooting star, he wished that you, yes, you watching this video right now, would subscribe to Wham Baam Teslacam. DNL was on his way home from the grocery store with his mother. The impatient driver of a pickup truck was not happy about the traffic. DNL had another car in front of him, and he told us he wasn't in a hurry himself, especially considering his mother was in the car. The pickup driver used the shoulder to speed around them, then brake checked them. This could have been the beginning of a lengthy road rage incident, but thankfully, DNL gave the overcompensating pickup driver some space and continued safely transporting his mother home. By the way, this is the first Teslacam footage he's shared from his new to him 2021 Model 3 after Hurricane Milton totaled his 2014 Model S. He likes the Model 3, but he told us he still misses his trusty Model S. Bradley was taking his Cybertruck through a drive-thru with an interesting view and smell. The fire department was extinguishing a vehicle fire in the parking lot, and Bradley's Cybertruck captured the whole thing on Teslacam. Can you imagine the headlines if that had been a Tesla on fire? Thankfully, combustion vehicles are around 29 times more likely to catch fire than EVs, so that almost never happens. Clark County firefighters arrived quickly, and Bradley wanted to shout them out for being amazing and brave heroes. While everyone else runs away from danger, they run toward it. Bradley did his best to calm down the car owner, reminding them that cars can be replaced and it's their safety that really matters. Jordy was stopped at a red light. As the signal was about to turn green, he noticed another driver running their red light. Incredibly, a cop car was waiting right next to Jordy, and the officer immediately served up some instant justice. Jordy told us he'd just picked up his Model 3 and was just waiting for his first Wham Bam moment. His passengers joined him in shouting, "Wham Bam instant justice, man," before he quickly saved the video. See you later, and have a very Merry Christmas.